Welcome to annual training this year, everybody. We're doing something a little bit different this year. What we wanted to show is how everyone is tied in from the beginning of getting the product to when it goes out the back door. It's very important that everyone in the organization understands what their part in the production of this unit is and how it all ties together. Typically, the donor room services staff really doesn't get to see what happens with distribution. Distribution doesn't see necessarily what happens with donor recruitment. So what we really want to do is give all the staff the opportunity to see it from start to finish. No department's more important than any other, and we all truly believe that. We are all in this together. We should pull for each other. We should have each other's backs at all times. And ultimately, it's about saving lives, which is what we do every day in our community.
And donor recruitment plays an integral role in convincing people to take that time to roll up their sleeve and allow us to come at them with a 16-gauge needle. That process of making the decision to give blood is one that most people don't take lightly, and donor recruitment helps ensure that they understand not only what they're getting themselves into, but the benefit for patients at the other end. So one of our goals is to try to make sure we accurately predict what a donor response will be at any given blood drive. We use a lot of resources to come up with that answer. We can look at any given organization and we can take a look at their productivity over time. We can look at certain seasonal swings that they might have. In reviewing their production history, we can also look at hourly flow and determine, is this a group that tends to show all of their donors over a course of 2 hours, but in fact the blood drive spans 5 hours. Collectively, we try to put that information on the table every Friday when donor services leadership comes together with our donor recruitment team, and we review that history, taking a look at everything coming up on next week's schedule, trying to give short notice kinds of information that might be helpful to our donor services staff as they arrive on site. And we also look 3 weeks out when the donor services schedule is being built, so that when Marilyn and Mike are putting that schedule together, they can have the best, most recent information that is likely to be seen at each of those blood drives.
For the general population in our communities, donor room services is the face of the organization because we're the people that they see. And so probably one of our key functions is donor retention. You know, recruitment can get them there, but if they don't have a good experience while they're there, if we don't perform in a timely fashion where it isn't too big of an inconvenience, if they don't walk away feeling good about what they did, then we're not going to retain them. So that's a huge function in our department. Someone in donor room services needs to be compassionate. They need to care, not just about the donor in the seat, but the recipient on the other end. You also have to have a respect for your procedures so that you understand why you do things a certain way and why you can't deviate. Failure to follow even one step in those SOPs could result in harm to our donor, to our recipient. Even though things don't always make sense to you and you wonder, that seems so silly that we have to do it that way. Usually there's a behind the story. And if you ever wonder why something is written a certain way, come in and ask, because the why is always there.
Part of the process because we can assure that the quality of each product released to the hospital meets our standards. There are 4 staff designated as auditors, and they work mostly in the evening or early morning, so general staff may not ever necessarily cross paths with them. auditing at the end of every evening when all the records return from the mobiles. They do a record review and then releases the units that pass that quality check, holds the units that issues are found with. Components can begin to make products, but the units can't be labeled and released for distribution until the audit's completed. BBCS has changed our job significantly. The most obvious way is there isn't a paper donor history form to audit. Additionally, there wasn't a predefined audit module within BBCS, and so we have developed ways to cross-check information within the system. It's a faster, more efficient process with BBCS. There is, I can't tell you a percentage, but there's a significantly less amount of time spent during the actual audit process. If it's a situation where we have to speak with the donor, we have 24 hours from the time of VP to contact the donor. If we don't get the information in that timeline, then the unit's not eligible, and we would have to destroy it. And so that's always a challenge, to get that information in a timely fashion so that we can release the unit if possible.
So the first part of the manufacturing process is receipt of the blood product into the laboratory. Blood products come in a cooler, and the first thing that the lab staff is going to do is open up the cooler and look in the cooler to see what product is in there, has it been packed appropriately, and does the information on the verification of number of units form match what's in the cooler. Once the staff have verified that the product has been packed appropriately, they will unload the cooler and fold the units and insert them in a centrifuge liner. They will weigh the product on a scale and then determine which centrifuge that the product is going to go into. The centrifuges are at a timed speed and amount of time. The goal is to make sure that the cells go to the bottom of the bag and separate from the liquid part of the whole blood, which is the plasma, which will remain at the top of the bag. As staff unload the product from the centrifuge, they will bring them over to an area called the line, which is a set of blood expressors. When the unit is placed in the expressor, the plasma portion is expressed off and separated from the red cells, and then an additive solution is flowed back into the red cells, mixed appropriately to prevent the red cells from clotting, and it also gives them the 42-day expiration date of the product itself. The red cells will go through an inline filter. It filters out the white cells and will go into a secondary bag. The products will be taken into the walk-in refrigerator to complete their filtration, and the plasma will then be brought over to be entered into the computer system and frozen for storage. Because timing is so important in the ability to make the product that we need, our department will work with other departments to make sure that the product is collected in the appropriate bag at the appropriate time and returned to the lab within the appropriate time period for us to be able to create the product that's needed.
A lot of patients in the hospitals are multiply transfused, so those patients that have been transfused build what is called an antibody, and we will provide the antigen-negative blood for those hospitals. Another thing we do here in the reference lab that a lot of people don't know about is every unit in the entire facility, every mobile, we actually hold a segment for. If there's ever a hospital that can identify their own antibodies, but they may not carry the antisera to antigen type units, they can give us a call. We can pull a segment out and we can test it and let them know. It's really good for the hospitals for the fact that we can quicken the turnaround time. They don't have to wait for us to send them a unit down. They already have the unit on the shelf. We freeze red cells. A frozen red cell is good for 10 years as long as it is stored properly. proper storage is in one of these very large freezers at -65 degrees below Celsius or below that. We try to freeze cells that are super rare, that if a patient has an antibody to it, we can have them ready within an hour and send out to the hospitals. We wash red cells and we wash platelets. We have washed cells for burn patients. There are specific diseases that some patients have that require washed red cells, and patients that are deficient of an IgA protein also require red cells. This helps the patient get blood without having a transfusion reaction.
Our primary job in distribution is to provide blood products to the hospitals. And so it's very important to provide the best customer service that we can by providing them all of the hospital needs at the time that they need them. This takes a lot of coordination between departments. We coordinate with donor recruitment, the donor room services, and the laboratory to make sure we have the right mix of blood products and the types that we need to fill the orders in a timely manner. Once the blood has been collected and it has been tested, all the QC requirements have been made, and the lab has labeled the product, the laboratory issues the blood to distribution. It's our responsibility to make sure it's stored per FDA requirements while it's here. Also, we must make sure we ship and pack correctly so that the product gets to the hospital within the right temperature range. It's a good feeling to get that panicked call from the hospital wanting product, and we know, yes, we've got it and we can get it to you right away. And then when they deliver it to the hospitals, you know, they're very grateful, especially if it's a stat order and we can get there very quickly and give them what they need.